All right, guys, a couple things to show you today. We are going to change the oil and the fuel filters and that sort of thing in the 6.7 liter diesel F350. But I also wanted to show you, and now of course this is a work in progress, so bear with me. But this is a nice little bay here, right, that the tractor normally fits in. But it is pretty sweet, you know, to be able to get out of the rain. Obviously, you might be able to hear that it's raining. But then, if you look behind me, you can see I'm trying to straighten up the shop and put my workstations and that sort of thing up in this area. So it's going to look pretty nice. And actually, I'll be able to find tools. I know, it's crazy. All right, so we'll walk through changing. You have to change both the fuel filters. There's two of them. And then of course, oil and oil filter. Now, I realize this is really basic for those of you, who have been working on your own vehicles for quite a long time. But, a lot of folks are buying diesel vehicles, and it's for the first time. And so, just a couple of differences with the diesel vehicles than gasoline. And then some of the things that I'm going to say apply, of course, to any oil change or fuel filter change. So the first thing I want to do is to ensure that the parts that I purchased are in fact replacements for the ones that I'm taking off, because that's sort of a problem, right? And believe me, it may sound crazy, but it happens. You'll get the oil drains and everything, and then you'll realize you don't have the right filter or something else, and then you're stuck because how are you going to get down to the auto parts store? So with this one, I just got underneath the vehicle and I confirmed that the 2051S is in fact the filter that is currently on there. And then I looked, just checked again to make sure that this is the fuel filter that goes up into the engine compartment. And then this is a water separator fuel filter that I'll show you as we put them on, but that goes below. And of course, the housing there, isn't replaced like this whole. This is one single unit. This just uses a water separator fuel filter that actually inserts into a housing that stays on the vehicle. Okay, so that's like the first thing you need to do. So now you're like, okay, I've got the parts that I need to put into it. Oh, of course, then we have oil as well. All right, and so then the next thing, of course, is going to be oil. Since we're homesteaders, we get the 5-gallon bucket, which is 20 quarts. The F350 takes 13 quarts at a time, so that'll leave a little bit of extra, either to top off or for the next oil change. When I get the next 5-gallon bucket, then I'll have an additional 6 from that too, and that'll give me 12 of the 13 right there, right? So that's how that works. Anyway, that's what we're doing. Okay, after the parts that you purchase, the equipment that you need is not too complicated. So you want a drain pan that is the proper size. So remember, I have 13 quarts. This is a 15-quart drain pan. You better check that, because otherwise you're going to need 2 of them or you're going to end up with a mess. Probably need 2 anyway, because one goes underneath the drain plug and then the other one underneath the oil filter. So I do have a second one, as you'll see when we do it. No big shakes. The other thing, a set of gloves. I mean, this is always going to be dirty, and okay, you're maybe not changing oil every day, and so whatever the health benefits are, the consequences are, okay. But at the end of the day the exposure seems to be horrible, doesn't it? Anyway, so, just a pair of little nylon gloves really would help a lot. Then you need a little socket, or you could use a wrench, just like a regular crescent wrench or whatever. This one, nowadays, guys, everything's metric. I don't know when the last time I used an SAE was. So if you're going to invest in something, you're probably better off investing in a metric set of sockets and wrenches if you don't do a dual set. In all honesty, I think you're going to find, even on this Ford, everything's metric. Okay, so this one is a 16 millimeter, and then I'm using the 1/2-inch drive. And the reason I use that instead of a 3/8-inch drive is because, some people crank those little bolts on there, and so you just a little bit bigger handle. This is what a 3/8 looks like. Handle looks like, so it's just a bit smaller, so you just don't get the same torque on it. Now you just have to be careful about that when you torque it back down. And you can also use a torque wrench. I have one of those as well, because there is a specific torque that it's supposed to go to. Anyway, 1/2 inch I just found to be a little bit, or particularly when you're using it as a breaker. Okay, and the other thing, of course, is a oil filter wrench, right? So this just simply goes down and clamps down onto the fuel filter so that you can take it off. And to take it off, you're going one direction, right? Because it's cranking this way. And then to put it back on, you go the other direction. But listen to me, don't use this to put it back on, because the vacuum that's going to be created inside of the system is, going to tighten or crank down on that filter. And so you will find usually they're pretty hard to get off, but you just want to hand tighten it, putting it back on. I'll just for the sake of argument, I'll show you a couple other options. This is a rubber, oil filter wrench. You can see it just does the same thing. It cranks over onto this pad, and you can take it on and off by flipping it over, same as this one. And then the last option is this, and this goes over the end of the fuel filter, right? It's a cap, but unfortunately this one's a little smaller. I would use it. And then of course this just uses a socket right there to be able to take it on and off. So those are the simple tools. You really don't need a whole lot to do this process. So everybody ought to be doing it. All right, guys, so let's get on it, and we'll show you how it works. All right, guys, so to prep the vehicle, one of the things that you need to do is to make sure that the engine's warmed up some. Now you can see from the radiator that the engine's warm, right? Now this is, you see how that has water underneath it with a thermometer in it? That's showing you that's the radiator fluid temperature. And then this has a sprocket, which is basically the engine, right? Engine temperature, which basically means the oil temperature. With this, some people say make sure that the oil is all the way to operating temperatures, but that's over 150 degrees. And dealing with 150 degree oil is just its own challenge in itself, right? So I say, you've obviously got the temperature, if the radiator fluid is up into operating temperatures, then the oil being warm enough so that it flows, because you just want it to flow out of that oil pan. Once you have it started up and let it run, it takes a long time because these are big, thick, heavy blocks, and it takes forever to warm them up. So sometimes you need to go for a ride first. Anyway, once you get that up into a temperature range, you want to let it sit for a good 10, even 15 minutes. And the reason is because all that oil has been thrown up into the upper part of the engine, and it takes time for it to drip back down into the pan for you to be able to drain it out. So give it a few minutes, let it drip down into the pan, and then when you release it, then you'll get all that 13 quarts out of there. So that's what you're looking to do. All right, there you go. All right, once you've got that oil temperature up a little bit so that it will flow, the next thing you want to do is to release the pressure inside of this system, and you simply do that. You could pull the dipstick out. Oh, I don't think I had mentioned, the one thing you want to kind of carry with you is just a rag or a couple rags, because you will get dirty. All right, so this will be one of them. When this comes out, the end of it is going to be, look how long that thing is. My heavens. Look at that thing. Woo! Yeah, the end of it, let's see, I'll put it on here for you. It's going to be a little dirty, a little covered with oil. All right, and then the next thing you do, really, which is to open up the fuel filler reservoir cap. So now you've got some air, right? So when you pull the plug out of the pan and it starts to come down, this is going to be able to allow air to go in and to replace that and allow that oil to flow much more freely. Okay, so those are the two things. So you just warm it up and then pop this cap off, and you can take the dipstick out if you want to, and then you are good to go. Okay, guys, so the first thing we're going to focus on is the removal of this plug. This is the oil drain pan, okay? And this plug, of course, is the oil plug. You can see the oil filter back here behind it. I have another pan there specifically for that. This was pretty convenient. Usually they're located right over the framing or suspension, so they drip all over the place. It's just sort of the thing that they do. Speaking of that, one thing that you want to think about is, now you have 13 quarts of oil in this pan with quite a bit of weight on it, and it's warm, so that oil, when it first comes out, is going to come out in quite a stream. So you want to make sure that you've got your Kentucky windage set up so that when it comes out, it will not get splashed all over the place, which it will anyway, but you know, as little as possible, right? That's why you have your little rags, okay? And then as that pressure gets released, that flow is going to come back towards this, and you're going to have to watch that, because otherwise it'll drip on the other side of this pan because you set it so far forward. So it's just a little kabuki dance, not a big deal. So let's just loosen this up. There's the beginning of your, see there, I've already got it. So drip it on the ground. All right, so I'm just taking this off, and then as soon as I get it free, right now, it's just got a little bit, okay. Yeah, if you can get it just so that you can get your fingers on it later, it just makes it a little bit easier because you can hold it in there, you know, hold it into the threads long enough to move this pan out, because it will come out of there. Okay, I can now just feel it, okay? So there you go. That's the kabuki dance right there. You see that? Now, you ask, why did I suggest that you have, why did I have gloves on? Look at this. Can you see it? Yeah. That was real. Now I'm going to push this back. See, this is backed off a little bit, so I'll move it now so that I'm sure that I'll catch the dripping as that pressure releases. And that's really coming out of there. I mean, it's filled this container. There is a drain in the container, of course, that goes from the top catch down into the container, and I just want to make sure it's wide open. Yeah, see, that oil is nice and warm, but it's not, you know, 160 degrees or something. So that's why I say, you know, a little bit of subtlety and sophistication. You don't have to have it at full operating temperature. Look how it's flowing out of there, okay? Now, these gloves are completely trashed, okay? So I'm just going to pull them right off. Flip them inside out as I pull them off so that I manage the muck. All right, and then just push this back to make sure I don't create any more mess than I need to. All right. Okay, so now that you sort of have that under control, now is the time to think about the oil filter. So these two are very close to one another, which suggests that the best thing I can do is I have a longer pan, see? This one's round but very deep. This one doesn't hold that much, but it's long, so we would cover both of these. So probably just sort of sliding that out of the way in this new pan into a position where I can catch both the engine oil, which I'm still doing, and now the filter. And then you just look at this and say, okay, how does this work? See, remember I told you it collapses down on itself. So I obviously, this is, you know, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, so I want it to go left. So So that means I just slip that over it like this. And then the handle, it'll just sort of grip. Like I said, it gets like a little bit of a vacuum in there, right, from when the system is closed, and so as a consequence, I didn't put gloves on, so I'm going to go get gloves real quick because you're going to see this is even messier than that. And with a new pair of gloves on and using a longer pan to replace this round one, which is very deep, so it's very good for the you know, the oil reservoir or oil pan. But the problem is that you couldn't do both the filter and this drain. If you only had that, then you would want to seal this back up while you do this and then unplug that again just to make sure that you get all the oil that you can out of it. Now this, of course, as we said, it tightens like this. You put it on there. I've already loosened this up a little bit simply because it does get kind of tight. So don't think that this is the amount of pressure that it requires. It does require a little bit of pressure to break that seal, simply because there is sort of a vacuum or a pseudo vacuum in there as the system is closed. Now this is just going to be a mess. I'm sorry. It's what happens is the oil is going to obviously want to run down. It's going to run down around the outside of this filter. So you need to sort of position yourself to be prepared for that, and of course to position the pan to be prepared for that. Like that. This is why you don't want the temperature operating, you don't want the oil at an operating temperature. All right, guys, to reassemble this is much cleaner than what you just experienced. So, okay, so you have a filter seat up, of course, connected to the engine, and you just want to take a nice clean cloth and wipe that down to make sure, you know, it's kind of like canning food, right? You need to make sure that that seal is good. And then, once you got that nice and clean, then you want to take a little bit of new engine oil that you're about to pour into it and just put it around that ring right there, okay, that little O-ring right there. That way, you get a nice seat. Okay, that just spins right on there like that. And then you hand tighten it. Like that. Make sure that's hand tight. And you just sort of clean this off too. Now that's going to continue to drip for basically ever. You're not going to, I mean, you could, you know, leave it overnight or something, or for hours and hours. But that, the little bit of oil that's right there is not going to be a problem. All right. Yeah, you know, this is a pretty level surface I'm on right now. And of course, the drain pan is designed with a little pitch to it to help it drain out. But even with that, you know, it's just pretty difficult. So you just clean off the bolt, obviously, because, you know, you get little metal shards. I mean, that's what the point of the oil is, right? To take any of the wear that's taking place in the engine, obviously to make things more efficient so that metal moves past metal a little bit more gracefully. But at the end of the day is there's still going to be some wear and friction, and that's going to result in metal particles. So you're hoping not to see too many of those. In fact, you should be checking your oil to make sure you don't have, particularly after, you know, the first time you run it. That's the reason you have a break-in period and you have that early oil drop, is because naturally when the engine's brand new, it's going to have more
friction and more oil, metal, sort of as these pieces marry up together. Now with just over 100,000 miles on this, shouldn't have that, and you should be checking your oil. So I'm just going to snug this up. Doesn't have to be crazy tight. If you look in your shop manual, I'm sure there's actually a torque setting, and you could of course use a torque wrench on it, but I don't know anybody who does. I mean, you just don't get stupid, you know, but tighten it up and then check it, of course, once you start the engine up. So now this under here should be pretty well sealed. Everything's empty, and now you can sort of clean up your area before you move on to the next phase, which is now obviously recharging the oil, putting new oil in. All right, guys, so one thing I will say here is that there's a couple things that you can't have too many of. Funnels of different shapes and sizes is one of them. And then the other thing is those drain buckets, having several different shapes and sizes of those, you really can't go wrong. You may be able to see over here, that's the one that I went from the 5-gallon to a 1-gallon jug. This used to be some Kubota engine oil. So, yeah. Let me see if I can't find a spot for you, just to let you show. It's not too difficult, right? I'm just going to pour that into there. That's obviously where I took the cap off, right? Okay. All right, let's get on it. Okay, so now this is 12 with a dipstick. I will now check the oil level. Now remember, you saw the oil filter. That's a big oil filter. That's probably half a quart of oil in that filter. So if it shows 13 right now, once you start it up and get all the oil through the system and everything, don't be shocked that when you come back, and you will come back because you'll make sure it's right, when you come back that you're not like half a quart low. And of course right now, because things are still dripping down there, I would expect it to be just a little bit low, but I want to know, is it high enough that I could start it and then just do this one time? Yeah, see, it's showing full. So that's enough for me to start it. So I'll start it and run it for a bit, check everything, make sure that my drain plug is sealed, make sure that my the filter is sealed, and that things are looking good. And then I'll run it for a bit, not a lot, and then I will leave it for at least 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, I will check it again and see if it went down to about 12.5 quarts or a little bit low. Most of the dipsticks, as I showed you the dipstick, all the way up to the top of the hash mark. Let me show you again because it sort of matters. For those who would actually be watching this because you're about to do it yourself. Okay, I can't, let's see here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that this fits in this way, right? So this is at the low end, and this is at the upper end. So there's a line there, and there's a line here, right there. And there's hashtags in between. This bottom means you're 1 quart low. So half a quart full. All right, guys, so let's see. Next thing we gotta do is change the fuel filter. And there are 2 of them on the 6.7 liter diesel. And this is the top one. You see this here device? Right, and so you can kind of see it right there. And then, so this is the inlet for the filter, and this here is the outlet for the filter. All right, so those are the 2 tabs. So the first thing you want to do, besides have your equipment squared away, because you really don't need any tools for this. Oh my God, I've never been on a vehicle which is harder to find some place to prop a leg or to lean against. It's like there's nothing to lean on in this engine compartment. Okay, is a towel, okay? Because this fuel is gonna flow out of here a little bit. You know, I mean, what? Of course it will. So, okay, so hopefully that didn't block your view there. We're getting my way, because I got to get underneath this bad boy. And this green one, you got to push those 2 tabs in and then lift up on this. Okay. Like that, see? See how it's really actually pretty easy, but it's just a little complicated, right? That's all. That's easy. That's okay. So then you just grab a hold of this thing, slip it off of here, eka, like that. Now, I don't know why it did that. The pressure's gone. And this one you push down, see? Like that. So you push down on it and go eka, like that. And that's off of there, see? As easy as that. Now you take this bad boy and you turn it like maybe a quarter of the way counterclockwise, see? Like this. You'll feel it. It goes all the way till it ends. It'll bottom out. You see? See, this is letting a little fuel go, see? Like that. Oh, there you go, see? That's about a quarter of the way around. Seemed to have sort of bottomed out. One version of this has like a little like a hose clamp sort of deal on there. But this year, 2014, doesn't have that. Oh, see that? That's it, see? Okay, so now all we do is we take this bad boy. This is the new one, of course. We just put her in there like that, right? In the same spot it was. See, it slides right down there, and there only goes in one spot. And then we turn it, obviously, clockwise until it locks in place like that. See how it locks in place like that? And then we just click these bad boys back on. Hear that click? Yeah. That's the way it works. And then this one, push that all the way in and snap that thing on. Make sure that they're on there good and tight. And that is how you replace the fuel filter, or let's say engine compartment fuel filter, okay? All right, guys, so now this is the second fuel filter. This big thing right here is the fuel tank. All right, so this is another filter. It's really a water separator. And the components are this. This is a housing. This housing has like a plastic nut. You see this nut? That's what you're going to do to obviously take this housing, move it down. This is a petcock, meaning petroleum cock, which allows fuel to flow. And it flows through this little port right here. And so when you're routinely, what you want to do like once a month is just open this petcock a little bit and let the water, because this is a water separator, so it'll catch the water down in here and let that water flow out of there, right? And then just tighten it back up. Now, and then this right here is the water sensor, okay? So this will tell you if you have a quote-unquote water in your fuel. You'll get like a little error light up on your screen which says water in the fuel. It doesn't actually mean there's water in the fuel. It means that this thing is full, all right? So what we're going to do here, you got to pay attention, okay? Because this is just, it's not tricky, but you just have to know how this thing sort of operates, okay? Because needless to say, if you turn this petcock on and there's water flowing out of here, well, at some point it's going to run out of water and you're going to have diesel fuel flowing out of there, and it would just flow for the rest of it until it empties the tank. Okay, it doesn't know not or when to stop. But there is a device in there. I can't remember what they call it, but anyway, it's a device in there that will obviously shut off the fuel supply. And how you get that to operate is this. This nut has to be turned 3 full cycles, or this device completely removed. Either one of those, it's really the 3 full cycles. Once you hit 3 full cycles, that valve in there will close and stop fuel from flowing. Okay, so that means you can obviously replace the filter in here without dealing with flowing fuel, obviously. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to drop it down 3 times, okay? And that is going to turn off the fuel flow, okay? And then we're going to open this up and just let it drain, because that way you're not dealing with a full container of both fuel and water. And so that's the best cycle to go. You can drop this all the way down and just deal with all the water and everything inside of here if you want, but why wouldn't you just drain it out peacefully right? So if you just drop this down 3, it turns off the fuel flow, and then this will just allow what is already in the filter, water and fuel, and just drain it so that it's emptier, and then we'll drop this, okay? But the first thing we need to do is to remove the water sensor, because you don't want that in the way, right? That obviously needs to come out of there. Okay, there's a little button on the back of it. You depress that button, and then you just sort of squeaky, and that'll come out of there, you see? You know how this is. This is not new to you. Okay, easy as that, see? Now, like I said, this is a 32 millimeter nut, all right? It's plastic, so you don't want to get too sassy with it. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I thought I'd use a breaker bar because I thought it would be easier to count the 3s, right? So, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It wants to turn all the way around. I don't think that's right. Okay, yeah, so I guess this whole thing turns. So that's... Okay, so that should be enough now. Better. Okay, so now we're just going to open this up. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Come on. All right, so see how that is? Boom. Now, if it flows for too long, then we know. I mean, I don't know what too long is, but if it flows for too long, then we know that that device in there hasn't turned itself off, right? Hasn't cut off the fuel flow. It said 3. I think I did 3. Heck, it's leaking from the top, so it had to have been far enough, I would think. I don't think I had reached the whole thing, so let me just take it off. And now, that is certainly enough. I mean, my heavens. That diesel should not flow too much, but that's a fairly good sized container there. But again, that is too... I don't know why it's not cutting that off. I sure hope it cuts it off as I take it much further down, huh? I would declare that as slightly alarming, to tell you the truth. So I'm just going to take it completely off. I have to get up in there because there's a O-ring right here, see? This O-ring, you got to replace this O-ring. And this O-ring should be lubricated with a little bit of fuel. Okay. I'm gonna put this O-ring on here now. Okay. Let it go all the way up. All right. Now what we're gonna do is we've taken this, we've cleaned it out, we clicked this filter back in. Now we're going to make sure we close the valve, stick it back up in there, and then go ahead and I'm just screwing it on. I know the camera or the light's not great. I'm sorry about that, but you can kind of feel it does sort of top out right there, right about, well, obviously where the sensor is. Yeah, it does sort of top out right there. I'm not going to. I'll turn this just a hair, but I'm really not gonna, like that maybe. But basically that's good. You don't want to crank down on this because that is plastic, okay? So that is it. Now, the most important part of this whole thing is the next step. Woo! I'm covered in diesel fuel. Anybody got a match? So let me take you up into the vehicle. Okay, guys, so now that you've got the two filters changed, you need to reset the fuel pump. Now, because we had the issue with the thing not cutting off, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to need as far as this, but we're going to do it. You turn it and then you turn onto the ignition, but you don't start it, and you do that 6 times for 30 seconds each time. Now, the reason that you're doing this, guys, 6 times for 30 seconds each time is because you are purging the system of air, okay? So it's a self, purging system, all right, that will, get all that air out of the lines and everything. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to, I think it's the big issue is on the high pressure side that goes from the tank to the pump is where you could potentially get air. Vice the low pressure side, which is what we're dealing with. Oh, I see. It's raining outside. That's what the noise is I'm hearing. I'm like, what is that noise? It's raining. So then we'll say that's 5. That isn't very good fuel economy, is it? I'll show you something I'm going to do, which probably will help that fuel economy some. Okay, so that was definitely 5. So then we'll do it one more time. Now you just heard the fuel pump turn off. Takes a little less than 15 seconds for it to I don't think it completely depressurizes. I think it's 2 minutes before it completely depressurizes. And then, yeah, I'm sure you heard it that time. And now this time we'll go all the way to a crank. And then we'll go check and see if we have a fuel leak. Unfortunately, my light's out, so you can't see it, but there's no fuel leaking there. There's no fuel leaking from those two. Okay, so that is how a fuel filter, the two fuel filters are done. Oh, I'll show you one thing. You know, you have to reset these things, so you just go into menu. The door jarring may crybaby at me. Let's see here. You go into settings. You go into vehicle. You go into maintenance. You go into fuel filter, and then you hold. And that is it. And I already did the oil. See, this was the oil life set here. When I did the oil, I did that. I already reset that. So that is it. Unfortunately, this 2014 does not show you the speed. So all you can do is stare at a bunch of worthless information. This is the most relevant information, but it's the most painful information because you can see that number right there. Okay, guys, there you go. I will clean out the EGR and check that. And that should help with the fuel economy. Okay, guys. So, what have we done together? We changed the oil. We've changed the two fuel filters. We changed the body mount bracket bushings or grommets. And now, the last two things we're going to do is general lubrication, which means we're going to grease all the zert fittings, which again can be found in your shop manual. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to clean out the EGR intake. Okay, so the EGR intake gets filled with the nastiest junk. And so we need to clean that out. And that will be right here. We'll have to move this stuff out of the way. There's a little sensor here that I'll show you that we have to detach, and then we need to just take this hose off, right? And inside of here, right here at the inlet, we are going to probably find, I mean, it could have been cleaned previously, but I sort of doubt it. We'll see. We'll see. There's 120 some odd miles. 120 some odd miles on this truck. And so you don't have to do it that often, but you know, 100,000 miles, yeah, you definitely should take a look at it and see. I'll bet it's pretty nasty. So those are the last two things we'll do today. So let's get her done. Let's get it move on. Okay, guys, so what we're looking for is there's supposed to be a sensor on here. Just lift this up. A little connector. Then back this hose away. Like that. See if we can't get it out of the way. Okay, and then let me show you what it looks like in there. All right, so that actually looks really, really good. You can just see the top of the valve. See that valve right there? Yeah. You'll see a lot of folks are talking online about pulling that, disconnecting that little valve right there to not allow the EGR to close. That valve, what it's designed to do is to allow the engine to warm up. So it closes, because the EGR, what it does is so that EGR, right, exhaust gas recirculator, what it does is it pulls some of the exhaust. It then puts it through a cooler, cools it down, then recirculates it back through the air intake for the engine, so it burns it a second time. And so what that valve does is it closes that off so that the engine, in cool weather, that engine will stay, can heat up. That's what that does. So people say it'll improve your fuel efficiency if you detach that valve. But I think you can tell from my system, I have Banks on here, the Banks performance system. And Banks says, you know, all of their stuff is calibrated to have the emissions controls and everything on there. So since there's been a significant investment in you know, the Banks performance system, I guess I'll go with their, you know, recommendation about what to do to augment or supplement what they have done. So anyway, that is actually in really good condition. I'm just gonna scrape it off and clean it up a little bit, but frankly, that's not affecting my fuel efficiency or anything at all. That's really clean. So somebody has cleaned this before. All right, so like I said, we're gonna check that and do that. We'll also, you can see I've got the Banks Ram Air. So we'll also check, obviously, the air filter and make sure that it doesn't need to be cleaned or replaced. And then we'll get to the lube. Okay. All right, guys. So this is the Banks air filter. You can see it's kind of dirty. So I will simply loosen this clamp up. It just has 4 screws that put the, you know, keep the housing down. And then I'll just loosen this up, pull this off, take a air compressor and blow it out, right? Obviously, you don't want to blow the particulates back, you know, further into the filter. And then clean it up and put it back in. Of course, check the other fluids: radiator fluid, brake fluid, power steering fluid, even the washer fluid. All those, just the basic things. All right, so here we go. All right, there was actually quite a lot of junk in there. Just banging it out caused it to, I got a lot out, and then using that air compressor, actually quite a bit, so that should help airflow significantly. So, all right, so we'll just put that back in. Like I said, check the fluids, and then get to lubricating the chassis and everything. All right.